Order. Questions to the Minister for the Cabinet Office. Mrs Cheryl Murray.
Question number 1, please, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, we have designed and created the award-winning and world-leading gov.uk, the central web domain for government information. We're also redesigning 25 major government services to make them simpler, clearer and faster to use, not only providing savings for the taxpayer, but also improving delivery for the public, focused on user need, not on government convenience.
Cheryl Murray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Could my right honourable friend tell me what steps he is taking to make sure that individuals who are not digitised, many of whom live in rural constituencies such as my own, are not disadvantaged if they cannot access digitised public services or can only do so at low speeds?
Well, Mr Speaker, my honourable friend raises a really important point. When we adopted the approach on the recommendation of Baroness Lane Fox of digital by default, if it can be done online, it should be done only online, we stress that for those who are not online, there must be an assisted digital alternative for them, and we are ensuring that that's the case.
Mr Barry Sherman.
Speaker, can I congratulate the Minister on much of the innovative, much of the innovative work he's done in the digital area. Thankfully, I think to the Baroness Lane Fox, the crossbench member of the House of Lords. But would he take on board that there are older people in this country are finding it very difficult to make that transition from a traditional way of communicating with the government into digital?
Doesn't apply to you, Bob.
I'm very grateful to the right honourable gentleman for his compliment, and we are trying to make a lot of progress here, and we are regarded as being now world leading, having been, frankly, the British government a byword for failure in government IT. So that actually other governments are now using the source code for gov.uk, which is, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Baroness Lane Fox herself leads the Go On charity, which is dedicated to getting more people online. And that's the key purpose. And what we want is, when we provide the assisted digital option, we want to frame contracts in such a way, ideally, that they incentivize the provider not just to provide a service, but to use it to help the individual to get online so that their lives are enriched for wider purposes.
James Gray.
Mr Speaker, in answer to the very good question from our old friend from South East Cornwall, the Minister responded that many of them in my own constituency who have no access to computers and are not online will be given something called assisted digital alternative. Could the Minister perhaps tell us what an assisted digital alternative is?
It can take many forms, but the point is that the service is provided and the transaction is conducted digitally. It's conducted online, not necessarily by the citizen themselves. It could be done, for example, in a library where someone sits alongside the citizen and helps the individual to input the data and conduct the transaction. It can be done on the telephone, where someone on the other end of the telephone puts the data into the web service. A whole lot of different ways of providing it, which will be fashioned around the needs of the user, not around the convenience of the government.
Giomura.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the spring, the Minister announced his digital inclusion strategy to exclude 5 million people. In the summer, he told pensioners to get online or lose access to government services. And in the autumn, farmers find they need a credit reference from Experian to apply for CAP grants. The list of people he is excluding grows day by day. Next week, a report to the Labour Party will highlight the impact of his policies on the most vulnerable and how a Labour government would change that. So will the Minister tell me how many more people he intends to exclude from public services before he is voted out of office?
Well, I invite the Honourable Lady to dream on that front. But I mean, she sits in a place, in a party, which is ill-equipped, frankly, to criticise us. The last Labour government's definition of an online service was to enable people to download a form from the web, print it off, fill it in by hand and send it off by post, and they regarded that as an online transaction, not quite in the modern world. So we're glad that she's catching up, but she's still got a long way to go.
Yasmin Qureshi.
Number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, central government spend with SMEs increased from £3 billion in 2009 to 10 to £4.5 billion in 2012 to 13. They benefit from a further £4 billion in indirect spend through the supply chain, so we're on track to deliver our ambition that 25% of government's direct and indirect spend should be with SMEs. In addition, we're implementing further changes to procurement rules that will benefit small businesses.
Yasmin Qureshi.
The majority of local authorities are still not using the government's contract finder, resulting in local SMEs losing out on opportunities. What are the ministers doing to ensure that more local authorities submit their procurement opportunities on the website?
Well, there is a new and greatly improved version of Contracts Finder being launched early in the new year, and I would draw her attention to that. And it is a massive opportunity for local government, local authorities to procure better and cheaper, but also to be able to support local businesses. And there are now, for example, on our G-Cloud framework, over 1,000 suppliers, nearly all of 87% of which are SMEs, three of them, a number of them based in Bolton, and these are all now able to provide services directly to public sector purchasers, which is very helpful in terms of growth and jobs as well as better value for the taxpayer.
Charlie Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister tell the House what is being done particularly to encourage innovative SMEs to get in on public procurement and update the House on the effectiveness of the mystery shopper tool?
What we've done is to enable suppliers who think that or suspect that procurements are being done in the old-fashioned way that we inherited, to raise that directly with my officials in the Cabinet Office, who can then intervene with the public sector procurer commissioner to ensure that it's done in the modern way, which does not anymore exclude small businesses from supplying to government in the way that was routinely the case in the past. But we've made a huge amount of progress, Mr. Speaker. We still have a long way to go.
McKechin.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this policy is delegated to individual departments.
And McKechin.
Well, I'm very interested by the Cabinet Minister's response, because I understand that the Chief Secretary to the Treasury has been writing emails and letters to other Secretaries of State asking them not to write off. So can he please confirm if that is correct, and can he also place all correspondence between him and other Liberal Democrat ministers about their opposition to this Tory attack plan on worker representation?
Well, I think I can do no better, Mr. Speaker, than quote what PCS themselves have said, where they quoted their member identified as June, who said, "Direct debit is the easiest way of paying my union subs. You know then that it's going to get paid because you're not dependent on your employer taking it from your wages." She went on to say, "I think it's better. I agree with June."
Andrew Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree that the relationship between trade unions and their members ought to be direct and not intermediated by the civil service?
As PCS themselves were saying in their document that I quoted, it is a very archaic way of operating, which predates the existence of bank accounts and predates the existence of direct debits. And frankly, most of the civil service unions don't use check-off, they use direct debit, because they think that's the modern direct way for an organisation to have a relationship with its members.
Helen Jones.
The DWP estimated that the cost of ending check-off across government departments was £1 million. He denies that, so will he tell us now exactly how much it is going to cost to implement what is a political attack by the Conservative Party rather than a policy worthy of government?
I'm particularly grateful to the Honourable Lady for raising that specific point, because she is completely correct that an official did produce the figure of £1 million, but when asked for the workings, for the calculations which underpinned that number, were unable to produce some. It was a completely it turned out to be a completely fictional number. And the correct calculation of the cost, it turned out to be more likely to be actually a negative number, a saving of costs to the taxpayer, as well as enabling PCS to do what their members now prefer to do, which is to have this direct relationship with their members.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. The Paymaster General has again reiterated his support for getting rid of Chekhov, even though the Chief Secretary has written to departments saying there could be legal costs associated with getting rid of Chekhov. And we now also have a leaked HMRC memo which talks about marginalising the unions, which could lead to industrial action amongst the civil service unions. Doesn't this show that ministers are playing irresponsible party politics with the trade unions, and he should abandon his plans to get rid of Chekhov?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's always very reassuring to find that the old truths turn out to be enduring, that Labour speaks for its paymasters, the trade unions.
Morning, I have topical questions. Mr. Brian Donohoe.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, my responsibilities are for efficiency and reform, civil service issues, public sector industrial relations strategy, government transparency, civil contingencies, civil society and cyber security.
And Donohoe.
Answer. He's also responsible for Ministers' Register, and it's some time since that was done. I wonder when it will be done. I'm interested to know whether or not his right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, is still an honorary member of Irving Burns Club, and as to whether or not he's still in the Blind Society as part of his financial interests, or whether or not we can see where we're going in this subject.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have no idea what that was all about, but I'm sure that it can be pursued through different channels.
Lucy Powell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's good to see the Deputy Prime Minister this morning talking at family-friendly working. But what is the right honourable gentleman doing to ensure best practice on family-friendly across the civil servants, and in particular access to high-quality and high-level part-time and flexible opportunities? Isn't it about time that the government showed leadership on this issue instead of lecturing others on what they're not doing?
First of all, I warmly welcome the Honourable Lady to her post. I've slightly lost count, but on my reckoning, she's the fifth incumbent of this shadow post, and I'm sure the best, and looking forward to a warm relationship with her over the coming period. On her very valid point about the need for government to exercise leadership in providing family-friendly opportunities for flexible working, I very much agree with her that we should do that, and we are already. We're providing more opportunities, and we think that there are very significant productivity improvements from enabling people to work more flexibly, but it has always to be stressed that it isn't an entitlement, it has to be according to the needs of the business.
Mr. Andrew Gwynn.
Thank you. Several ministers, including, it has to be said, the Prime Minister, failed to handle data with a certain amount of precision. Indeed, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister told the House that there were 1,000 extra GPs, when in actual fact there are 36 fewer GPs. Can the Minister, who is responsible for consistency and coordination across government, clamp down on these bad practices and perhaps also help the Prime Minister to correct the record today?
Mr. Speaker, we're really not going to take any lectures on this kind of thing from the party opposite, who brought the whole idea of fiction writing into dispute during their time in office.
Mr. Andrew Percy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've previously praised the important role parish councils play during national emergencies, such as in my constituency in the flooding last year. The picture is still very patchy nationally in terms of parish councils that have emergency plans in place. Can I urge the Minister ahead of this winter to once again have another push on ensuring parish councils take up their responsibility in emergency planning?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend makes a very valid point. He works very hard in this area. I will ensure that the point he makes is taken on board and acted on.